Welcome. My name is Brint Driggs. We've created this opportunity to provide you ideas, knowledge, skills, and tools to enable your success. Today, in order to kick off our series, 2009, Your Best Year Ever, I wanted to talk about one of the very basic building blocks of success. Actually, it's one of the very basic building blocks of life. It's one of the building blocks that you can use to change your situation, regardless if you're talking about you want to change in your personal life, or you want to change your career situation or opportunities financially. And the building block I'm talking about is what I use, a principle called the gap. And when I talk to business clients and I work with professionals in a coaching arrangement, we always talk about gaps. Because gaps are really the very basic elements of all successful people. Let me explain what I mean by a gap. A gap is very simply looking at where I currently am and being very clear about my current situation, and then identifying the desired result that I hope to achieve. Clearly, where I am and where I'd like to be, there's a gap between there. So what are the steps, what are the processes we need to do in order to close the gap? Let's talk for a minute just about these gaps, because these gaps show up in every element of our lives. I'm working with my kids in school. They understand that they have a certain level of knowledge right now. If they desire to get an A in a class, they have to get certain knowledge. They have to acquire certain knowledge and go through certain processes to acquire that knowledge in order to achieve the A. If they want to get into a certain college, they're going to have to accumulate enough of these A's in order to be accepted into the college. If they would like to have a certain career, they're going to have to continue that process in order to become a doctor or a lawyer or whatever their particular goal is. So there's a gap in school that we've all used that throughout our lives. As parents, we have gaps all the time, and kids are very great at presenting gaps to us. Just as soon as we think we got it figured out at one stage in life, the kid has now changed, and now we are in a situation where we have to learn, we have to adapt, we have to develop new understandings and knowledge in order to enable and empower that child and love that child at their current stage in life. In relationships, clearly there's gaps all the time. Successful marriages, successful relationships in any endeavor require us to continually adjust and adapt in order to close the gaps. The very essence of business, if you think about the principle of business, the very essence of business is closing the gap between the market needs and your customer needs and your current level of service and your ability to deliver that service consistently to not only meet the needs but to exceed the needs. So the principle of gap is everywhere in our existence. And I want you to become very keen on this. So let's talk about a little bit about, tickle apart the principle of gap so that we start to understand. First off, when you start to evaluate your current situation, a couple things have to exist. First and foremost, you have to be really accurate and very honest. And this is very difficult because as a natural process in life, we get kind of lost in the forest, so to speak. We get very deep into the trees and we tend to lose track of where we are in this process of life. Perhaps we lose a job, or we have a crisis in a relationship. What that does is it forces us to be very clear, to look at what is our current situation. And once we get honest and accurate about that, then we have to obviously identify what is our desired result. A couple of principles on desired result. In order to really create a compelling goal, you have to create a very detailed description of what that desired result needs to be. The more emotionally connected you can become with that desired result, then the more compelling it becomes to empower you and motivate you to go through the necessary change process to close the gap. So let's talk about two basic principles that I want to address. Actually, three basic principles we want to address as you start to look at how do you close the gap in your life. The first principle is a principle called the law of cause and effect. This is the underlying principle in every asset or every aspect of our life. Dr. Stephen Covey in the book 7 Habits of Highly Effective People calls this space between stimulus and response, right? We have a choice, and we have to recognize that every choice that we make is going to produce a result. We're a cause, and there's effect of those choices. There's effect for every cause. So if you are in a situation where you feel stuck, you feel bogged down and unable to produce the results you like, then it's important to step back and recognize that what are the behaviors, the attitudes, the knowledge or lack of knowledge or lack of skill that have gotten me to the situation I find myself in. We're going to spend a lot more time, and one of our next guests, Bill Ferguson, is going to share a lot of insights on how do you really understand this law of cause and effect in order to implement change in your life. So I don't want to get too much into that at this point, but I want you to think about why you are where you are and recognize that by definition, if you want to produce a different result, you have to do something different. That's great because that is the way we close the gaps in our life. That's the way we learn, we progress, and we produce better results in our life. The second principle that I want to talk about is a principle called humility. And humility is very simple, but it's very difficult for people to kind of get their arms around, because humility is just recognizing that I don't know what I need to know in order to be where I want to be. Recognize that I have to acquire new knowledge. I have to change. I have to be willing to identify where I may be falling short. That's okay, because that's the gap. We're always trying to close the gap. The third principle is just recognizing what do I need to do and what do I need to know in order to produce a different result. If you think about that, understand the law of cause and effect, inject some humility into the process and recognize and embrace the opportunity to grow and to change, and then look at very clearly what is it that I need to know to move to my desired result, and what do I need to do to produce a different result in my life, you're going to be much more successful at closing these gaps. To summarize, we've talked about 3 principles to closing the gap. Understanding that we have to understand the principle of cause and effect, understand the principle of humility, and recognizing that there's things that I need to know that I don't know in order to be at my desired result, to achieve my desired result. And the third principle is that there's things that I need to know and do differently in order to produce a different result, which are all very closely related. I recognize that in the short time we had today, we could only touch at a very high level. If you're interested in more information, then please make sure you go to www.2009yourbestyearever.com, sign up for the email notes that we'll send out, and we'll send you some detailed notes on the things that we talked about, the principles we talked about today. In addition, you'll get some more information that if you do have interest in participating in a more detailed teleseminar series to help you to implement these principles, we'll simply tell you how you can access that information. Once again, we appreciate your time, and we look forward to talking to you tomorrow. Make it a great day.